Welcome to ENT student for a discussion on swallowing and its management for a head and neck patient. Swallowing pre-treatment.
At pre-treatment, HNC patients demonstrate a less efficient swallow. Of the 352 patients assessed using BFSS in the study, 59% complained of difficulty swallowing, with those who had oral tumors and smaller tumors less likely to complain of dysphagia. Swallow function was worse for patients with oral and pharyngeal lesions than laryngeal lesions and with increased tumor stage.
It's very important that efficiency in swallowing is less in the case of head and neck patients. And in a study, as we could see here, in oral tumors and small tumors, they had less likely dysphagia. In oral tumors and small tumors, less likely dysphagia. And for pharyngeal lesions and laryngeal lesions, and based on the increased tumor stage, stage 3 and stage 4, there was increased amount of this difficulty in swallowing.
The conclusions of the study were that the patients, despite their symptoms, had highly functional swallows. In a study that investigated the swallowing function of stage 3 and 4 HNC patients pre-treatment, patients with laryngeal and hypopharyngeal tumors had the most severe dysfunction.
As we could see, even in the worst of the cases, there is some amount of function that is left out in the patient. And stage 3 and 4 pre-treatment, wherein the patients with laryngeal and hypopharyngeal, so larynx and hypopharynx, they had the most severe dysfunction. Larynx and the hypopharynx had the most severe of the dysfunction.
The study did not find that swallowing function was correlated with tumor site or overall stage, which would add evidence to the adaptation of patients to their dysfunction. In another study of pre-treatment speech and swallowing, by the use of regression techniques, in a number of patients with tumors of oral tongue and anterior floor of mouth, articulation was significantly reduced.
As you could see, that there is something called as adaptation of the patients to the dysfunction. This occurs gradually with any cancer. The worst being with larynx and hypopharynx. And then this study did not find any tumor size and stage related issue towards this dysphagia, difficulty in swallowing. And some other studies, they have found that even in the oral tongue and floor of the mouth, there was some amount of articulation defects which led to dysphagia.
In addition, the percentage of those with oral tongue and tongue-based tumors that were also affected also significantly related to swallowing efficiency. While the research does not allow for precise predictions to be made, it underlines the diverse nature of the symptoms and findings that can be identified in patients.
So you could see in oral tongue and tongue-based tumors are also related to swallowing efficiency, and of course you cannot generalize the things, they are of diverse nature and you should understand the symptomatology.
Of course, there is more to swallowing than solely the biomechanical process. Mood, depression, anxiety, change in taste, fatigue, pain on swallowing, that is odynophagia, lifestyle will all influence appetite and may mean that a patient is not maintaining their normal weight.
Especially the mood, taste changes, fatigue, odynophagia, lifestyle, all these things are also important along with the biomechanical process of swallowing.
It is important for the MDT to bear in mind the different causes of reduced oral intake and to understand these changes within the context of the patient's normal lifestyle, which may or may not include high consumption of alcohol and tobacco.
The multidisciplinary team should be aware about these changes within the context of the patient's normal lifestyle. Should keep in mind about the lifestyle and the changes that occur, and they also should keep in mind about this alcohol and tobacco habits.
The pre-treatment stage is a valuable opportunity in which there is time to build an informed assessment of a patient's symptoms and how they might have already adapted to some of the changes caused by the disease process.
So once you have to evaluate the patients at the pre-treatment stage itself, they should be informed properly and assessment of the patient is to be done properly, and it is the time to build an informed assessment. So pre-treatment itself you have to do all these things, and by the way they would have adapted to something and you should know that also, and then the changes caused by the disease leading to adaptation also should be understood in the pre-treatment stage itself.
Swallowing disorders after surgery. If the therapist has seen the patient pre-surgery, judgments can be made as to how the surgery has impacted upon the patient. The SLT needs to assess the effect of the surgery on the patient's speech and swallow before the patient starts to trial oral intake.
So this particular speech and language therapist should see the patient pre-surgery. That is the ideal thing. So that is how he can understand about the surgery and what it would have done to the patient. What is the impact of surgery to the patient will be understood in that manner. He has to assess the effect of the surgery. So what surgery would have caused to the patient, and upon the speech and swallowing, and by the way before the patient tries to take orally, what changes would have occurred he can assess properly.
While in the acute stages of recuperation recovery, the need to heal will preclude eating and drinking. The SLT is still able to informally assess the patient's oral movements and their ability to deal with their saliva.
So in those acute stages of recovery, so we should the healing is a must for number one eating and number two drinking after surgery. So healing is a must and should be kept in mind by the evaluator, and he should evaluate the oral movements and ability to deal the saliva. That should be kept in mind.
This may include giving the patient an opportunity to try and communicate and give feedback on how they feel about any changes in their communication abilities.
So communication and feedback on how they feel about their communication abilities. The patient should be telling about all those things to the particular analyzer.
It is worth noting that research reports that a tracheostomy tube does not increase the likelihood of aspiration, and that neither the presence of the tube nor decannulation causes a deterioration or improvement in swallowing function.
Very important for ENTs, like tracheostomy tube does not cause the increase in the chances of aspiration. So it is a protector. In fact, tracheostomy tube protects from all these things. It is a protector, and its presence, that is the presence of tracheostomy tube or decannulation of the tracheostomy tube, you cannot say that deterioration or improvement of swallowing function. Swallowing function is somehow independent to all of them.
The presence of comorbidities predisposes the patient to dysphagia and aspiration rather than the tracheostomy tube per se.
It's not just the tracheostomy tube, it is the comorbidities that is to be kept in mind before dealing with the patient.
As a general guide, the larger the resection and the more dynamic the structure resected, the more one may expect the speech and swallow to be affected. A study on oral or oral pharyngeal resected patients concluded that the total volume of tongue resected and percentage of tongue base resected had an impact on post-operative swallowing function.
Based on the size of the resection, the larger the resection and the more dynamic the structure resected, we have to expect the speech and swallowing to be affected. Based on a study on oral and oropharyngeal research concluded that the total volume, the amount of the tongue resected and the percentage of tongue base resected. So volume of the tongue is number one. Number two is tongue base. The tongue base resected had an impact on swallowing. So the amount of the tongue, even the tongue base is also very important.
In further studies investigating the effect of flaps, patients with comparable site of resection and percentage of oral tongue or tongue base resection had the same or better function if primary closure could be achieved in comparison to those who had a flap reconstruction.
So as we have already seen, resection and percentage of oral tongue and tongue base should be kept in mind. There was always a better function with the primary closure. There was a better function with primary closure and less with flap reconstruction. More better with primary closure and less with flap reconstruction. If flap is being done, the outcome is a bit lesser. Supracricoid partial laryngectomy.
At laryngectomy are at a risk of aspiration and need the input of SLTs to identify and carry out swallowing and voice rehabilitation in order to prevent repeated aspiration and to facilitate a return to oral intake and functional voice. Patients need to be carefully selected for the procedure in the knowledge that they are likely to have a period of aspiration after the surgery.
Especially this supracricoid partial laryngectomy or supracricoid laryngectomy is a one surgery wherein the risk of aspiration will be there, and these therapists should identify how swallowing is going to be affected and how voice rehabilitation has to be done and how the aspiration can be prevented. This is to facilitate an oral intake and a functional voice. These are all to be kept in mind when the person is going to be undergoing supracricoid partial laryngectomy or supracricoid laryngectomies. They should be carefully selected. The patient should be carefully selected with a good lung function, and period of aspiration should be kept in mind. So if there is a chance for aspiration like COPD patients and with decreased lung reserve, you cannot go for this surgery. Decreased lung capacity, for those people you cannot go for this surgery. That is a pre-treatment evaluation which helps us to cope up with challenges.
Laryngectomy. For patients who undergo a laryngectomy, the presumed outcome has been that they cannot aspirate and therefore have minimal dysphagic symptoms. The incidence of dysphagia for this patient population has been underreported. The removal of the larynx results in an increased level of resistance of a bolus to flow through the pharynx into the upper esophagus.
So as in the case of laryngectomies, so they cannot aspirate and therefore will have minimal dysphagic symptoms, as we have seen in this particular statement. It is underreported about the dysphagia of these type of patients, and the removal of larynx results in increased level of resistance. The resistance increases, so the resistance for the bolus to flow through the pharynx into the upper esophagus, the resistance always increases.
Laryngectomized patients need a better tongue function. To compensate for this, the patient has to increase the pressure from the tongue to overcome the altered pharynx. If there is reduced tongue-based pressure, there is prolonged bolus transit times and poor clearance of residue.
So as in the laryngectomy patients, as you could see over here, they need a better tongue function. So laryngectomy patients, they need a better tongue function. They have to increase the pressure from the tongue to overcome the altered pharynx. So they have to be trained how to use the tongue. So laryngectomized patients, they should be trained how to use the tongue. And if there is a reduced tongue-based pressure and prolonged bolus transit times, poor clearance of the residue. So laryngectomized patients, the function completely depends upon the tongue base. The tongue base is very important, and it has to create increased pressure to overcome the pressure that is caused in the pharynx.
The effects on the patient's quality of life and any reduced function are varied, and reduced function does not always lead to reduced quality of life. If the disease process is such that there is a need to use a graft or stomach transposition, there may be subsequent dysphagia symptoms for the patient to adjust to.
As we could see, the effects on quality of life and reduced function are varied. Every time the reduced function does not mean directly the quality of life is reduced. It is not directly proportional. You should say that the reduced function does not always reduce the quality of life, and it depends. Like for example, if you take a graft or a stomach transposition or something like that, there can be subsequent dysphagia symptoms for the patient to adjust. It depends upon the surgery and depends upon the patient too. Not every time the quality of life is compromised.
Swallowing disorders after surgery and radiotherapy. Patients recommended as a result of their pathology to have radiotherapy will experience effects from treatment which may include neuromuscular damage and fibrosis of the irradiated tissues. The implications of the treatment are that the oral and pharyngeal stages of swallowing are affected.
So this we are discussing about the swallowing disorders after surgery and radiotherapy. So in this situation, the radiotherapy will experience effects from the treatment. Radiotherapy will cause effects because of the neuromuscular damage and fibrosis. The radiotherapy will be damaging because of neuromuscular damage, and number 2 is fibrosis of the irradiated tissue. And in the oral and pharyngeal stages of swallowing are the most affected. Oral and pharyngeal stages of swallowing are the most affected.
In a small study of patients who had either had surgery and radiotherapy or surgery, only the latter group were reported to have slower oral transit times due to xerostomia, greater pharyngeal residue, and reduced cricopharyngeal opening due to what is termed a reduction in the pharyngeal bolus driving pressure.
So you could see surgery alone and radiotherapy or surgery, if you take it as an option, there is a decreased difficulty in swallowing because of slower oral transit times. It is taking some time for the transport to occur. Number 2 is xerostomia. Number 3 is cricopharyngeal opening difficulties. And reduction in the pharyngeal bolus driving pressure. So as you could see, this dry mouth and then cricopharyngeal opening difficulties and greater pharyngeal residues, the food is left over there, all these things are the reason for your dysphagia in this particular radiotherapy group.
The same authors further explain the reduction in the pharyngeal bolus driving pressure as a consequence of radiation-induced fibrosis on the soft tissues, and that specifically the effect resulted in reduced tongue-base retraction, a decreased bulging of the posterior pharyngeal wall, and a reduced duration of contact of the tongue base to the posterior pharyngeal wall.
So this dysphagia in this particular situation is because of the reduction in the pharyngeal bolus. The bolus formation is less. Number 2, it is the radiation-induced fibrosis. The fibrosis is because of the radiation that is there, and reduced tongue base. The tongue base is supposed to be very important as far as the swallowing is concerned, especially in the case of laryngectomized patient. And decreased bulging in the posterior pharyngeal wall. Decreased bulges in the posterior pharyngeal wall, and duration of contact of the tongue base to the posterior pharyngeal wall. So this tongue base and its contact to the posterior pharyngeal wall is also very important in these patients.
Swallowing disorders from chemotherapy and radiotherapy. Current research now indicates that radiotherapy and chemotherapy can affect the function of patients' swallow and quality of life issues. The term organ preservation seems to have been used because there is not a specific date on which the tumor has been excised.
So we should always keep in mind about it. Now we are talking about the chemotherapy and radiotherapy, that is swallowing disorders that are present in chemotherapy and radiotherapy. Now it indicates the research indicates that radiotherapy chemotherapy can affect the swallowing and quality of life issues. The only plus point with this chemotherapy and radiotherapy is the organ is preserved. The term organ preservation seems to be used because it is not a specific date on which the tumor has been excised. That organ is preserved in this.
There is plenty of evidence showing both short and long-term radiotherapy and chemoradiotherapy have an effect on the patient's ability to return to normal diet.
So both chemotherapy and radiotherapy are affecting the patient's ability to swallow.
Based on retrospective analysis of patient data, aspiration is a silent morbidity following chemoradiotherapy, and it is underreported because of the silent nature of the symptom in HMC patients. While cure has got to be seen as the main objective of the treatment, it is important for clinicians to discuss with patients that there are going to be some changes in their swallowing abilities.
So even in the chemoradiation, there is a silent morbidity of aspiration, and we have to discuss with the patients about this difficulty in swallowing ability.
The research remains sparse with information in terms of post-1-year treatment, and much of the difficulty in trying to compare the expected effects is that the disease and treatments have many variables. When analyzing saliva production post-chemoradiotherapy at 12 months post-treatment, saliva production was found to be significantly decreased, which then impacted on the patient's perceptions of their swallowing ability and therefore their dietary choices.
As we could see in the 12 months post-treatment, the saliva production is significantly decreased. That is especially called as xerostomia, leading to dry mouth, and then it has impacted on the patient's perception of the swallowing ability. So saliva is must for that, and their dietary choices also.
In a study that investigated 170 patients who had been treated using both objective and subjective measures, it was the patients 3 months post-treatment who often had reduced oral intake and had a delayed pharyngeal swallow, incomplete laryngeal vestibular closure, reduced laryngeal elevation and a rating of a non-functional swallow, that is, demonstrated aspiration, residue within the pharynx, and prolonged transit times.
So in the post chemotherapy and radiotherapy, as what they could see, so 3 months, after 3 months post treatment, they could see that there is a reduced oral intake, delayed pharyngeal swallow. Number one is reduced oral intake, delayed pharyngeal swallow, and laryngeal vestibular closure is not occurring properly, laryngeal elevation is not occurring properly, and a rating of non-functional swallow, that is aspiration is there. What is a non-functional swallow? That is aspiration or residue that is present in the pharynx with prolonged transit time. The time taking is more. So aspiration, residue in the pharynx, prolonged transit times, these are all found after 3 months of post-treatment in a study.
Over time at 6 and 12 months, reduced laryngeal elevation and a rating of non-functional swallow remain significant to reduced oral intake with poor cricopharyngeal opening appearing as a new relationship. It is beyond the remit of this chapter to review these data in detail, but the precise nature of the symptoms described would allow a hypothesis-driven treatment plan to remediate or at least minimize some of the symptoms that are being described.
So in a 3 months duration we have seen, now it is a 6 months duration. What is happening is reduced laryngeal elevation, rating of non-functional swallow, that is unnecessary swallowing, and remain significant to reduced oral intake, and the third one is reduced oral intake, and fourth one is poor cricopharyngeal opening. Number 4 is poor cricopharyngeal opening. These are also having some relation with the difficulty in swallowing. And we are going to think about the swallowing, that the hypothesis driven treatment plan to remediate or at least minimize some of the symptoms. So you should plan accordingly to decrease or minimize all the symptoms above symptoms that are quoted.
In the clinical situation, SLTs are moving from merely describing the symptoms to what rehabilitation and compensatory techniques can be used to try and improve the oral intake and communication of the patient.
So you should communicate the patient based on speech and language therapies. They should describe the symptoms, and they should try to improve the oral intake, and they should try to improve the communication by the patient.
Speech and language interventions. In a review of swallowing dysfunction and rehabilitation strategies for HNC patients, the behavioral and therapeutic procedures used by SLTs to eliminate aspiration and increase the volume of oral intake are described. The experienced team is aware that there are many variables that will affect a patient's ability to improve their swallowing and communication.
So when these problems are there, what are the interventions that you are supposed to do? So that you should have a rehabilitation strategy. These are called as rehabilitation strategies, and you should say about the behavioral and therapeutic procedures to the patient. All this is to eliminate the aspiration and increase the volume of oral intake. So you should promote the volume of oral intake. So that is the team will be knowing how to improve the ability of swallowing, number 1. Number 2 is communication by the patient.
There are essentially two types of rehabilitation that SLTs will use when working with HNC patients based on the objective and subjective assessments that they have carried out. Direct compensatory procedures, the aims of which are to reduce or eliminate the risk of aspiration and to control the flow of the bolus. Indirect therapy exercises to increase the range, strength and stamina of specific muscle groups.
So 2 types of rehabilitation. What are the rehabilitations possible? 2 types of rehabilitations are done. When that is objective and subjective assessments has to be done. Based on that, only 2 types of rehabilitation. Number 1 is the direct compensatory procedures. Number 2 is indirect therapy exercises. These compensatory procedures, they reduce or eliminate the risk of aspiration. They reduce or eliminate the risk of aspiration and control the flow of bolus. They control the flow of bolus. Whereas indirect therapy exercises, these exercises help in increasing the range, the strength, the stamina of specific muscle groups. It is like doing the gym. It's like doing the gym, and then you will be increasing the stamina of the muscles.
Direct procedures. SLTs are recommended to use a hierarchy of techniques so that nutritional quality of intake is not compromised while improving the safety or speed of oral intake. If this can be achieved, the calorific energy spent swallowing is not outweighing the nutritional benefits of the oral intake. The introduction of a posture chin tuck, head tilt tilt away from the side of weakness and head rotation to the side of weakness have all been demonstrated to immediately eliminate aspiration in HNC patients.
So what are they? There are hierarchy of techniques so that the nutritional quality of intake is not compromised. Number one, intake has to be maintained, improving the safety and speed of the oral intake. All should be kept in mind. So calorific energy spent in swallowing is not outweighing the nutritional benefits. So whatever the energy that you use for swallowing should not outweigh the nutritional benefits of the food that you have taken. So something like posture chin tuck, head tilt away. So number one is posture chin tuck. Number two, head tilt away, the side of weakness. Number three, head rotation to the side of weakness have all been demonstrated. So posture chin tuck, head tilt away and head rotation to the side of weakness. Tilt is away from the side and head rotation towards the side.
SLTs will discuss with the patient and work closely with dietetic colleagues in order to achieve optimal oral intake using altered dietary consistencies. For some patients, having a larger rather than smaller bolus per mouthful can be beneficial, as well as the use of multiple swallows to each mouthful in order to clear the buildup of residue that may occur.
So they should closely discuss with dietetic colleagues. These two combinedly work to achieve the optimal oral intake, and consistency of the diet also planned. So larger than the smaller bolus per mouthful can be beneficial. So some patients having the larger bolus will be helpful for those. In some patients, as well as use of multiple swallows to each mouthful in order to clear up the buildup of residue. So larger bolus and then multiple swallows is a better option in these situations.
Indirect procedures. The use of range of motion and resistance exercises are all therapies designed to improve the strength and control of structure within the oral tract. Swallow maneuvers are an example of teaching and reinforcing to patients that they can have voluntary control over what has hitherto been an automatic function. By altering the timing of a swallow, the neuromuscular sequence for the swallow can be changed.
So these are the indirect procedures. Direct procedures, you know how to teach them, and indirectly you just the range of motion and resistance exercises. Indirectly you have to go for the exercise procedures, and these are called as swallow maneuvers. So you have to reinforce the patient. What was the involuntary one, you will make it voluntary right now. So which would have been automatic, you make it voluntary, and you alter the timing of the swallow and neuromuscular sequence, and swallow can be changed.
Such techniques do require the patient to have an understanding of their swallowing skills, and SLTs are able to describe, explain and reiterate the new behaviors that can allow for successful swallowing or communication. Swallow maneuvers have been shown to improve tongue base, posterior motion and pressures generated during swallowing. Part of the SLT's role is to judge by working with the patient which combination of techniques is going to have the best effect on the patient to enable them to start managing some form of oral intake safely.
So those techniques, you have to understand the swallowing skills, and this speech and language therapists, they will be explaining, and then they will be training the patients for swallowing and communication. So those are called as swallow maneuvers to improve the number one tongue base, number two posterior motion, number three is the pressures that are generated. So they have a combination of techniques to have a best effect on the patient to enable them to start managing. The patient can themselves manage from the oral intake safely.
Swallowing maneuvers. Swallow name and effect. If a full swallow increases the pressure generated by the pharynx and oral musculature during swallow. Supraglottic swallow. Adduct vocal cords longer to protect airway during swallow. Supraglottic swallow closes airway entrance before, during and after the swallow. Mendelssohn's maneuver closes airway entrance before, during and after the swallow.
So these are the four swallowing maneuvers that we should be able to know: that effortful swallow, supraglottic swallow, supraglottic swallow, and Mendelssohn's